My name is Peristu Imami, and I'm the host of The Road to Success for Your Highly Sensitive Child. This podcast is about empowering parents of highly sensitive children to nurture their child's unique personality trait and create a path to success. Our podcast provides guidance, insights, and support to help you unlock your child's full potential, fostering resilience, confidence, and a bright future. If you're new to my podcast, please go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 because they provide information on high sensitivity that all subsequent episodes will build upon. If you skip these episodes, you won't get as much out of this and all subsequent episodes. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com. Today's episode is incredibly special as we have a remarkable guest joining us, a highly sensitive teenager who's here to share his inspiring journey. Our guest's mission is nothing short of transformative. He aims to shed light on what it means to be a highly sensitive teenager in a world that often misunderstands this unique personality trait. By sharing his own experiences, he hopes to empower thousands of highly sensitive children worldwide to navigate life in a more positive and fulfilling way. Sadly, the reality is that high sensitivity is often misconstrued in our society. Many individuals with this trait have faced bullying, mistreatment, and harsh words simply because of who they are. Today, our guest will bravely discuss these challenges and offer insights that can help create a more understanding and compassionate world for highly sensitive individuals. Join us as we delve into this important conversation and learn from our guest's wisdom and resilience. It's time to amplify voices, spread awareness, and embrace the beauty of high sensitivity in all its forms. Welcome, Alejandro, and thank you for being a beacon of hope and empowerment for highly sensitive children across the globe.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. Okay, let's delve into it. Would you please tell me about yourself and your journey as a highly sensitive individual?
Of course. So I was from birth a very, I suppose, in the conventional sense, a troubled child because I had very frequent meltdowns. I was difficult to manage emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't speak for most of my childhood
Mm-hmm.
when I was so thrown into school. So my parents were at a loss with me in many ways.
Yeah.
I feel I was definitely the odd one out when it came to school.
Yeah.
And especially because with a kid that doesn't talk, a kid you don't understand, and a kid that's not like you, it's very difficult to empathize, particularly at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like at a very young age, you knew you were different.
Yes, definitely because of how people treated me. And I've always had a sort of sixth sense for people's emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe not people's reasons, but people's emotions.
Yeah.
So I could understand that people didn't like me or they didn't feel for me. And I didn't understand why. So I didn't speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I too had that where I really felt as a very young child, I knew I was different. I even knew I was different than my family members. And it was really challenging. It was for me, it was very painful because I knew I was different, but I also knew I was a very good person. I was very kind as a child. And so I was like, I never understood, why is everyone so different than I am? And it's really nice when you meet other highly sensitive people and then you go, oh, there are other people like me. There are not many of us out there. Only 20% of the global population is highly sensitive. So it makes us very unique. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, of course.
My next question is, have you faced any misconceptions or stereotypes from people regarding your sensitivity? If yes, would you please share an example or two?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, quite a few,
Mm-hmm.
especially from my peers. It
Mm.
wasn't as much from adults, of course,
Yeah.
but it was definitely present.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I was often considered the shy kid
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't speak to anybody, save for maybe my family and a
Mm-hmm.
select few
Mm-hmm.
that I truly, truly trusted.
Yeah.
And it was definitely, I suppose, I was shunned for that. I was good.
Mm-hmm.
I was treated as overdramatic,
Mm-hmm.
as too sensitive,
Yeah.
as I'm sure you're also a little bit familiar with.
Yes.
And I was told that talking wasn't as hard as I made it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, obviously, I didn't understand, so I assumed that there was something wrong with me, that I was truly different, or that I was unlike everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I was also under the misconception, because of course I struggled in school because of this, that I was less than,
Yeah.
that I was unintelligent,
Mm-hmm.
because people seemed to know so much more than I did, or rather, I should say now that things came a little bit easier to other people.
Mm-hmm. Specifically speaking, because I know you, and I was there when you were little, and you were incredibly intelligent as a child, incredibly intelligent, way beyond your years. And so it wasn't that you couldn't speak, because as a highly sensitive child you need to feel safe, and if you don't feel safe with the people that are around you, you may have these types of reactions, because you're overwhelmed by your surroundings, and so you may not speak as a result, not because you can't, but only because you're not feeling the safety that you need to feel, because you were able to speak at home, right? So it's not that you couldn't speak, it's just that you didn't feel comfortable speaking. Is
That's
that
right.
is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally get it.
I feel the one other person I was able to speak to was my best friend,
Mm-hmm.
Ilya.
Mm-hmm.
I'd known him since, well, he was born.
Yeah.
So I would say I definitely felt very comfortable with him.
Mm-hmm.
We were practically like brothers, even
Yeah.
before my own brother
Yeah.
arrived. So he was my translator, not because I couldn't speak to
Yeah.
at all in the presence of other people, but rather I didn't feel. You're right. I didn't feel safe enough
Yeah.
to speak directly to people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, but with being judged in school or in anywhere really,
Yeah.
sometimes even at home, it only amplified this fear of talking to people. So I
Yeah.
spoke to him, and he helped me throughout most of my childhood bit to speak as a mouthpiece.
That's so amazing. I love that. It's so awesome when I hear these types of friendships that you build that are so rewarding, and from the very get-go it's like this thing where it's a reciprocated relationship where you give and take equally, the same way that we breathe equally. We inhale and exhale the same way, like the same length, and unless we're practicing some kind of breathing technique, but
Yeah.
in normal breathing you inhale just as much as you exhale. So that's really cool to hear. Any other examples that you want to share with us?
I was definitely I went to speech therapy
Mm-hmm.
for a while to try and learn the basic fundamentals of communication,
Mm-hmm.
particularly because obviously from not speaking as much,
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with a few verbal habits.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that was what surrounded most of my childhood, because outside of speech therapy,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely felt isolated.
Got it.
And I felt, because I was never an introverted person growing up. At home, I think my parents could be a testament to this. I would never stop talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But outside of my house,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't say a word, or rather, I didn't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's completely understandable because, and this is why it's so important. I teach my clients that the first step in raising and parenting a highly sensitive child is acceptance. Because once there's acceptance, then you can take the next step, which is understanding and learning about high sensitivity. Because for example, the example that you're giving me, if people knew how to make you feel safe, then you would have been fine. You wouldn't have even needed speech therapy because the only reason you were not speaking is because you were not feeling safe.
That's
And
right.
so if people knew, and that's why it's so important that people accept high sensitivity and not try to change it, because it's a genetic trait, it's a personality trait. It is not like a medical condition or anything like that. And there's no cure for it, nor should there be, because there are so many amazing traits about this personality. And that if people started seeing those things, then they would really not pay attention to the emotional aspect of things, where high sensitive people tend to be more emotional, like they feel deeply and therefore they show their emotions deeply. But even that, if they have the right tools, they can manage their emotions. But there's so many positive aspects of being highly sensitive, and that's why I'm so grateful that you're here as my guest today, because that's what we're going to demonstrate through these questions that we're going to be talking about. So my next question is: teenagers can be challenging for many. How has your sensitivity affected your experience as a teenager?
That's a good question because I feel like a lot of people definitely judge the hardest time of being a teenager as
Mhm.
middle school or around that area when you first start.
Yeah.
Because everybody's new, everybody's still figuring out like a new, I suppose, a lot of changes in life,
Mm-hmm.
with your body, with society.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely the hardest for me
Okay.
because as to start off, a byproduct of high anxiety and a lot of high sensitivity is I had trouble with executive function,
Mm-hmm.
which essentially meant that I couldn't figure out how to multitask very well.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, multitasking isn't exactly a thing that anyone can do. You can't do two things at once, but
Mm-hmm.
just the spaces in between.
Yeah.
I think with having 7 classes in different places
Mm-hmm.
and the workload ramping up, I struggled a lot
Yeah.
because I was used to having one class throughout all of elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly because it was schooling, something I had already had trouble with
Mm-hmm.
because of how hard it was for me to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
My grades started dropping, my anxiety was raised, and I suppose that only fueled my
Mm-hmm.
sense of inferiority,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a time
Yeah.
where my emotions were definitely already flaring up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense because for highly sensitive individuals, change can be it can be very challenging, because especially such a big change, going from having to go to one class versus 7 classes, that's a huge jump, right? So it makes sense that you had the reaction that you did. And again, I think unfortunately, because high sensitivity is still not very known, people don't know how to manage it. But if your teachers knew about high sensitivity, they would have been able to help you. And so you wouldn't get so overwhelmed. So, yeah, hopefully, between this conversation and the work that I do, we can help teachers and other adults that children would interact with learn about high sensitivity and how to help individuals who are highly sensitive thrive in life.
I agree. I feel that also in a society where, especially in teaching, it's
Mm-hmm.
designed for the masses rather than for one individual.
Yeah.
which is not to say that it would be fair to the teacher to instruct every individual student in a class.
Yeah.
But the system is definitely in an already very flawed education.
Yeah.
It was difficult growing up,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the added challenge of having trouble with executive function and anxiety.
Yeah.
I would also say a big trouble with, I mean, of course, I assume I'm not the only one that's had trouble with judgment from other kids.
No. Actually, the majority, if not all, I want to say 99.9% of my clients have been judged, and not just as a child, but throughout their life, including myself. And yeah, and it's really sad. And also, just to go back one step to the comment that you made about the school system not being able to, really in concentrate on an individual, but keep in mind that high sensitivity is 20% of the population. So it's not that you are the only person that that has this personality trait. So actually, teachers, schools, principals should really educate themselves about high sensitivity, because they will have 20% of the school. At the very minimum, they could have more depending on, because it's the 20% of the global population. It doesn't mean that it's 20% of that school. It could be more than 20% in that particular school.
I
So
agree.
they should definitely learn how to at least be knowledgeable. If they don't know how to help a highly sensitive person, at least they don't have to add to their stress or to their anxiety, right?
I
Because
completely agree.
if they stop judging, it would be enough. They don't have to do anything else. They just have to learn what not to do is perfectly enough, and it's much better than judging and doing all the wrong things.
That is a good point. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, to have the knowledge of another, I suppose, another challenge in a child's life, or
Mm-hmm.
just in anyone's life for that matter, it
Yeah.
could be a teacher that has it, um, would make all the difference. Even if the changes are subtle, the knowledge would do all the better. Because
Yeah.
I know instead the the automatic reaction would be to say that this kid struggles in school. We don't know why, but
Mm-hmm.
they struggle.
Yeah.
And often that is the leading reaction to what could be high sensitivity.
Yeah.
I also think that having teachers that with the knowledge on this very, as you mentioned, a very surprisingly common trait
Mm-hmm.
would help other children that don't have it, or even those that do,
Mm-hmm.
understand it a little better.
Yeah, exactly. Which would help actually with forming relationships,
Yeah,
you know? And it's so important to form relationships because it makes life so much better in everything. Even it's not just the school years, but even in a company. For example, for me, the most memorable company that I've ever worked at is Sun Microsystems. And the reason is not just because that company was an amazing company, but it's because I had so many relationships that I had formed that to this day, 20 something years later, I still have those friends in my life, So, and I know that I looked forward to going to work because of it. So, and of course, as we are younger, it's even more important. Um, so, yeah, I really agree with what you just mentioned. Are there specific situations or moments where you feel your sensitivity is an advantage?
I'm glad you asked because that is definitely something that I've wanted to talk about for a little bit, not just
Mhm.
on the podcast, but with the in general.
Yeah.
Because high sensitivity is considered a curse
Hmm.
in anybody's life. It's often seen as, if not to be shunned,
Hmm.
to be feared, or to try and cure it.
Hmm.
I disagree. I
Hmm.
think that my high sensitivity my high anxiety, my executive function issues, maybe not as much, but I think that as an overall trait, it has helped me become who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I've developed an aptitude for people
Mm-hmm.
growing up,
Mm-hmm.
even despite all my challenges with people growing and communications.
Mm-hmm.
I got to know a lot of my close friends as well.
Yeah.
Just through when I started to talk, after I got out of my comfort zone and I found my voice.
Yeah.
I said I made tons of friends. I started interacting with a lot of really great individuals,
Mm-hmm.
especially, and I think that saved me. That saved my perception on definitely humans as a whole.
Yeah. And it's because of your sensitivity that you were able to form those relationships, because as a highly sensitive individual, we because we feel deeply, and because we're so observant and we see things that most people don't see, we're able to pick up on a lot of cues that people are giving that most people don't pick up on. And as a result, you know what that person needs before they even ask for it.
That's right. I think that is a very powerful tool that I don't think anyone should get rid of.
Yeah.
Because considering how on a larger scale it's not as common, and I think it should be cherished
Yeah, absolutely.
to have those people that can see you for who you are, see you
Yeah.
for how you're feeling,
Yeah,
and see you for what you need.
exactly.
And I think I didn't get a lot of that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
The people that did see me and they did feel for me are the people that I grew up to admire.
Mm.
Not just for me, but because they had that capability, that potential, and just that heart.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that for other people,
Mm-hmm.
considering that he was that while a lot of people didn't, quite a few people felt it for me,
Mm-hmm.
and they helped me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do that myself one day.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw someone that was struggling like I did.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I feel like highly sensitive people tend to have a big heart. They tend to want to help. They're not, you know, it's not all about themselves and their life and what impact, what is beneficial for them, but it's more like, how can I better somebody else's life? How can I add value? How can I help somebody? Even when you see people, like I see people all the time, and living in San Francisco, people, especially nowadays with all the news about San Francisco and how dangerous it is, people are like, oh my God, why are you approaching someone? You should be careful or whatever. But I'm like, yeah, but I could see that they are struggling, that they need help. So of course I'm going to approach them. Yes, if that person has a weapon, I won't approach them. I'm using my brain. But if I feel safe and I can help that person, of course I'm going to step in and help, because they need my help. They don't have to ask for it. I can see, I have eyes, I can see they need my help. So, and I'm not the only one. I know that, again, because I know you as a child, I am, spend time with you as a child. I know that even as a child, you had a really big heart.
Yeah.
Okay, so conversely, are there specific situations or moments that where you felt that your sensitivity is a challenge? I know we talked about several examples already, but are there other moments that you want to share?
Yes, definitely. My primary challenge growing up was definitely in school.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose originally it was communication because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't open up to people. I couldn't speak to them, at
Mm-hmm.
least not verbally.
Yeah.
I could, and because of that, I found it hard to find friends or to find other kids that could feel for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because definitely a lot, if you're obviously with a kid that is different from you, and at that age,
Yeah.
with likely very little knowledge
Mm-hmm.
on what even the definition or of highly sensitive was,
Yeah.
people couldn't understand me.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was definitely with academics,
Mm-hmm.
because of course, with, you know, struggling with anxiety on tests, whether it be with homework or organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that's never really come naturally to me. I struggled to turn in assignments. I didn't do as well on exams. I couldn't present for a while, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I got better at it, but
Yeah.
it it definitely took a toll on me throughout most of my early schooling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of highly sensitive children, um, struggle with everything that you just mentioned, unless they they have help with somebody that teaches their parents about what high sensitivity is all about. What do you need to look out for? How do you manage that? How do you teach them? What tools do you teach your child? Things like that. Most highly sensitive children go through what you've gone through, including myself.
Yeah, I think it is definitely also worth noting that a lot of the people that judged me or criticized me or couldn't help me through my childhood weren't armed with the knowledge on high
Yes.
sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I do think needs to change, because
Yes.
even my own parents didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how to help me. There was no
Yeah.
manual on how
Yeah.
to help a kid like me, especially with all this stress, all dealing with school, being a
Mm-hmm.
first child,
Yeah.
and giving them no prior experience to how to
Yeah.
raise a boy.
Yeah.
I think it was definitely challenging.
Absolutely. And the interesting part about high sensitivity, even though it's been known since at least 1991, people still don't know about high sensitivity even today. When I ask people what is high sensitivity, or do you know about highly sensitive person, they are like, oh yeah. And then when I ask them, they don't really know. They don't answer correctly, because there's four aspects of being highly sensitive, and people might know about one aspect of it, but they don't really truly know. And the interesting part about this is that I too, my parents are highly sensitive parents, both of them are, but even they didn't know about high sensitivity, and they're in the medical field. And they definitely didn't know how to parent me properly. And I struggled a lot as a child as a result of it. So it's something that I'm really hoping that I can help change. And with people like you, guests like you, who come and explain, and talk about their journey, and help people understand what it's like going through a childhood where people don't understand about high sensitivity, and the impact that people have on you when they use terms like, why are you so sensitive? Um, I think that it's really innocent. Like, my parents love me, your parents love you. They did the best that they could, but they just didn't know any better. And
Yeah,
that's what it's so important to change that, and just advocate for highly sensitive individuals, and do our best to change the perception and the understanding that people have of high sensitivity.
yeah,
So thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable.
yeah. Of course.
Okay, my next question is, oh, this is perfect. We are just talking about this. How have your parents or caregivers supported you in understanding and embracing your sensitivity?
So I definitely think that, starting with my mom, she took every trick in the book out to get out to try and understand the challenges that I had, and try to help me a lot through my childhood
Mm-hmm.
with the challenges that I had. I remember, I believe the first time was, of course, the speech therapy,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't necessarily the speech that was the problem. It did, of course, affect my speech.
Mm-hmm.
She did. She also she used to play word games with me,
Mm-hmm.
rhyming games. where we would try to finish each other's sentences with rhymes to improve my speech, and in a fun way too, may I add, because I would say I like you, my parents are all both very sensitive, and she especially had to struggle with that growing up. Another trick she used was talking. To me. We talked a lot about our sensitivity. She never, whenever I would, and of course as a kid, I would always build things out of whatever I could find, whether it was drawing, whether it was construction. She would never shun me for it. She would always encourage me. She would encourage it, actually. She took me to buy supplies. She talked to me about it. We would make up stories together too.
Yeah. And your mom is amazing at storytelling.
Yeah. And I remember as a kid, we would always correct each other, and we would add to each story she made up, and we would just spin them on the fly.
Yeah.
Until who knows how late. And I think those are definitely the most special memories to me, because to this day I still draw, I still write, I still build. And because naturally things that having a very keen eye and having very high sensitivity help me with.
Oh, extremely. So highly sensitive people are extremely creative people.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that your mom, of course, she's extremely creative herself. It's amazing that she encouraged you to stay with things that you cared about, and she didn't try to get you to do the things that she was creative in. You know what I mean? Like, it's really important, because a lot of parents, they try to teach their child or steer their child towards something that they think would be beneficial for their future, for example, so that they can build that skill set from the time that they're a child. But for highly sensitive children, it's important to encourage whatever is naturally coming out of that child, in as far as their creativeness is concerned. And it sounds like your mom did that for you, which is amazing.
She did. She definitely, of course, she would always tell me the risks of being a creative, because she was in art school at the time. It was difficult at times, because a career as an artist is, as many people know, not an easy one. But she would never tell me to not be who I was.
Yeah.
She would also, one thing that she still works with me on today, is she'd tell me how I could use the skills that I had. Like, for example, an aptitude with people to help me in life in ways that led me to be very good, that helped me be happy.
Yeah.
In all the ways that she knew I could be, because we were definitely together for the longest, being her first child.
Yeah.
And she knew me because of that.
Yeah.
And she knew what I wanted. She knew, and what she did for me was not to tell me it was wrong, but to show me how I could get it. And she still does that to this day. That's something I'm very grateful for.
That's really awesome. I love that.
I think in the case of my dad, because naturally both of my parents are very intelligent.
Yeah.
He was always someone I could talk to. He was one of the driving reasons that I can now speak two languages, English and Spanish. Being from El Salvador, he would always give me the best jokes. We would laugh together, and we talk together about different topics, but especially one I remember that I still enjoy today is history. Considering that that because of my attention to detail and my curiosity for storytelling, I would always remember a lot of historical facts and dates.
That's right.
And different events that we would both talk about for hours on end. And at the time, I just assumed that it was just another aptitude I had. But now I feel that, or at least I kind of realized that was a part of who I was. It was my want to tell stories. and I could tell them to him and to my mom, of course.
Yeah.
But especially with my dad, when it came to dates.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And it's true. Like, not only are highly sensitive individuals very, very creative, like, for example, storytelling, drawing, these are all avenues of, utilizing your creativity, but memory too. I mean, it's amazing how our memories work. I mean, like, for example, with me, I can remember people from when I was little, like a child, where I can remember what they were wearing. I can remember what their hair looked like, what their makeup looked like, if they were, wearing makeup, for example. I could give you details of this person that I met as a child. And even if I only met them once, if I saw them as an adult, I could remember everything about them. And to this day, my memory is amazing. Um, and that's actually a very common thing with highly sensitive individuals. They have amazing memories.
Yeah, I agree with that actually, because I would say I have a very good memory for details like that as
Yeah.
well. I can remember several dreams actually, from when I was about 3 years old.
Wow.
I remember vividly my my niñera, or my nanny,
Mm-hmm.
holding me at about 2, before even my
Wow.
brother was born. And I remember a lot of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember feeling a certain way during all those moments.
Yeah.
And that was definitely my anchor, because feeling safe,
Yeah.
as we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and feeling secure and feeling happy above
Yeah.
all, is the key to coming out of that shell of
Yeah.
anxiety.
Absolutely. And feelings are so important. I talk about this all the time, where it's important to feel feelings and emotions. Like, um, as a child, I was very much shunned for feeling any emotion outside of happiness, really. And now, as an adult, for the past several years, I've learned to embrace my emotions and let myself process my emotions and go through them, and just feel whatever it is that I'm feeling. And I have a whole, like 4 or 5 step process that I use to, not just for myself, but also with my clients, that I use to process emotions.
Yeah.
And it's so important because, as a highly sensitive person, because you feel deeply, if you don't know how to process your emotions will just get trapped in your body. And then they just kind of build up, build up. And one day, something tiny, small, small thing could make you just like erupt like a volcano, you
Yeah.
know? But if you know how to process your emotions won't get stored up in your body.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it is also worth noting that a lot of people feel the same way, regardless of high sensitivity.
Yeah.
It is obviously a lot more prominent in high sensitivity,
Yes.
but I think the key to understanding what seems like such a foreign concept is to understand that it isn't as foreign as it seems.
Absolutely.
It is definitely a common occurrence
Mm-hmm.
for take many boys, especially the ones that used to tell me that I was too sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
to feel unheard, or
Yeah.
to feel like to feel lost on how to express themselves when they're angry, upset,
Yeah.
or just worried.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a lot of those emotions bubble up in the form of resentment,
Mm-hmm.
in the form of aggression, and that was definitely a challenge for me. At first, I felt like it was because of something I did wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or because they didn't feel. I was definitely I grew over time to know that that wasn't true.
Yeah.
It was because even now I can recognize that some of those people were highly sensitive themselves,
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't have that outlet. They didn't
Yeah.
have that ability to express themselves,
Exactly.
whether it be through creative outlet, through sports, or through
Mm-hmm.
anything,
Yeah.
any joy. I think to train those emotions and to train society even from a young age to express their emotions the right way, to express their emotions in a way that is healthy for them, that makes them knowledgeable, is the key to solving high sensitivity, or rather the key to understanding it.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, feeling misunderstood is a really challenging, for the lack of better word. The word that I want to use is probably not appropriate to use on this episode, but it's really a very uncomfortable feeling to have when people don't understand you.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes you feel hurt and sad and confused. You know, there's a multitude of feelings that go into it when people don't understand you.
Yeah, and I think also that under that misunderstanding, it isn't that it's changed as much today. I do think that, of course, people mature over time, but these problems are carried out into adulthood. It isn't. I know I speak a lot about childhood, but this is also very prominent even now of course I'm still very young, but as you've mentioned, in workplaces, in just conversation, a lot of the people that used to question me or that knew me throughout my childhood still don't understand what the meaning of highly sensitive is.
Yeah.
They usually they assume, oh, you were the shy kid, when that wasn't at all the case.
No.
I've seen what being shy is, and which is actually a very interesting thing that I noted as a kid, that I was somehow different from the definition of shy that I saw them use. It's that this common misconception of being shy, too emotional, or just reserved, is often the overlay of high sensitivity.
Yeah, and actually, I love that you said that, because I often, as a child, even as an adult, people would say to me, "Oh, you're so shy," and I would be like, "Not really. I'm not shy. I am an introvert, but I'm not shy." And in the introvert, I'm more kind of like almost in the middle. I'm not quite, like, I'm not a very extreme introvert. So I'm not an extrovert, but I'm not an introvert either. But if I had to pick one, it would be more towards the introvert. But I have never been shy in my life. But what happens is that as a highly sensitive individual, when you enter a new environment, let's say you enter a party that you've never been to that party before, you don't know anybody there, everybody's new, the environment is new, everything is new.
It'd be overwhelming.
You not only do you get overwhelmed, but you observe. As a highly sensitive person, you take the time to observe your environment. Who's there? What does it look like? What's the energy in the room? Who do I want to engage with? You're just like kind of analyzing everything, because we process things a lot and we analyze things a lot. We take our time. So it could come across as being shy or reserved, but it's just because we're taking that time initially. Maybe it takes 5 minutes, maybe it takes 2 minutes, who knows? Depends on the person. But because we're taking that time to do our processing and analyzing, people think that, oh, right away somebody wants to put a name on it and it looks like shyness, so I'm going to call it shyness. Where it's really not. It's so far away from being shy,
Yeah, I think that that is a good. I'm glad you brought this up, actually, because I would definitely say that another misconception about high sensitivity is that people that struggle with it or that have it are mistaken for being slow processors or slow learners.
Yeah.
Like, to give an example, I'm still not the fastest reader, I would say.
I'm not either.
Yeah, it's definitely obviously it's a challenge, but it also, I believe that it helps me understand the story a lot better, to process, to truly fill in, to see the story almost in my mind, and to paint a picture of each and every detail and what it means. And in a party, of course, that's the same thing. You're taking so much more input in than someone that may not have high sensitivity.
That's right.
Or may not have the same. They might not be as fine-tuned for the same details. So naturally, because of how much you're taking in, you're going to be a little bit slower to adapt to it.
Absolutely. And also you're going to be slower because you're observing a lot more.
Yeah.
And like you said, even in reading, to this day, I read slowly. I'm an avid reader. I read at least 5 books a month. I love books. And I mean, sometimes I don't sleep at night because I'm reading a book that is so interesting that I can't put down. And I know I work the next morning, but I don't care. I'm like, I have to finish this book. It's so interesting. So even though I'm an avid reader, I'm a very slow reader. And the reason is that I imagine everything that's going on in that book. It's like my reading is like I don't know, like in my brain, there's like a movie playing. And it's just, and it's vivid and it's details. And I mean, it's just very imaginative. So I'm not just reading the book, I'm just really taking in every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I don't actually mind being a slow reader because I enjoy that whole process of imagining the story and imagining the characters, and even my imagination even has colors. I mean, it's just like, seriously, it could be a movie.
Yeah, I agree actually, because I'm the same way. I've got a very vivid imagination for reading, whether it be for even like a story somebody tells me, for words written down on a page. And because of that, I needed an outlet. Because a lot of that was stuck in my mind growing up.
Yeah.
I think that my outlets obviously changed over time, which led to the misconception that my interests were changing, or that I was indecisive. And as me and my parents and a lot of people that know me now came to realize, it was actually because of how it's because I was changing how I could release that imagination into something into something I could see, into something I could feel, and something I could, most of all, share with the world.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's another here. I'm going to go into another misconception, is to be distracted or to be spacey. When in reality, you're taking in so much input that it's difficult to concentrate because there's just so much interference. So I think to have so much in your mind it's almost necessary, like essential, to have a way to extract some of it.
Yes.
Or to channel some of it into creativity.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So as we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think it is. One thing I've noticed that's very common actually is the individuals themselves don't even know that they're highly sensitive. I'm sure this statistic would seem shocking to most to find out that 20% of the population is highly sensitive.
Yeah.
That is something I've noticed growing up as well. I've had friends that now, growing into who I am now, the people that often judged me because I was I guess it's almost ironic, because I consider, was I the only highly sensitive? Was I the most sensitive kid growing up? Or was I the one that hit it the least? Because I can see some of my friends now. I've almost, like, it's been fine printed, that sixth sense has been really, really high pitched to find other people like me. And I can see it. And I can see people that are struggling because because like me, they didn't have that. They don't have that outlet. They don't have the knowledge that this podcast will hopefully bring to the world on what even just the definition of highly sensitive is. Yeah. And even more, how to address it.
Yeah. And also how to embrace the beauty of it.
Yeah.
There are so many strengths of being a highly sensitive person. So I want the world to concentrate on the strengths and not concentrate on the tiny little thing that, yes, highly sensitive people may, if they don't know how to process their emotions, they may show their emotions. They may cry when they get sad. Like I cried when I get sad. Not anymore, because not that I don't cry when I get sad, but I don't like, I used to cry, for example, at work, not often, you know, like, let's say if I worked at a company for 6 years, I might have cried once or twice. And that would be because I was so overworked and I was so overtired that I didn't take the time to like process my emotion, and it just got built up and then I would erupt like a volcano. But today I know how to manage my emotion. And yes, I cry when I'm sad, but I know how to process my emotion. Therefore, I will cry when it's not in an appropriate environment, like a work area. Um, but it's really important to know tools to use as a highly sensitive person too, and that's what I'm hoping, not just to shed light on the beauty of being a highly sensitive person, but also to help individuals who are highly sensitive gain these tools to help them manage their deep emotions.
Yeah, I think I think it's very beautiful that you're willing to do that for so many people.
Thank you.
And I think that definitely it is important to acknowledge that being highly sensitive is not being less than.
Yes.
Just like a lot of people mistake a lack of interest in, I suppose, the conventional skills like, math
Mm-hmm.
or business, or having less of an aptitude for them, is not a lack of intelligence.
Absolutely not.
I think it's rather to acknowledge that there is a lot of talent, a lot of intelligence, a lot of depth and importance to
Mm-hmm.
nurturing the skills that high anxiety gives you, and just being highly sensitive gives you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that a lot of the understanding in the world, the people that are the most compassionate, that are the kindest, some of the smartest too, may I add, are highly sensitive.
Absolutely. And the thing too is that when you can be your authentic self, that's when you can shine. That's
Yeah.
when you're not hiding your talents, that's when you're not hiding all the beauty that comes with having a high sensitivity as a personality trait. Because I can tell you that the moment I accepted myself being highly sensitive, and the moment I started talking about it instead of hiding it from everyone, is when I started shining.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for others, because I mean, as I'm speaking to you, I'm getting goosebumps all over, just because I know how it feels to thrive in life now, because I've been on the other side where I was successful in my career. Not that I wasn't successful, but I wasn't me. I wasn't authentic. I was being someone that people wanted me to be. And when you are trying to be someone who you're not, you may be successful at it, but you won't shine. You
Yeah.
won't shine at it. You won't, the way that I shine today, and my energy, and how people are so drawn to me because of the fact that my energy is so positive, is so different. My experience in life is different, just because I decided to be my authentic self and be happy about it and embrace it.
Yeah, I think that definitely goes for me as well. I definitely agree with the sentiment that
Mm-hmm.
that I have a lot of skills that I've learned out of necessity,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't be to say that they're not essential, but
Yeah.
they weren't. They're not part of who I wish to be.
Yes.
Nor are they my favorite. Like I could say, I could be, if I practiced a lot at math, I could be a mathematician, but
Yeah.
obviously I don't want to be.
Yeah.
I would also say that it is important to acknowledge the high sensitivity, and I think this is what we're trying to get down to, the two of us, is it isn't a bad thing.
Absolutely not.
That it isn't something to shun or something to deny.
Yeah.
I believe that because we live in a society where being normal, or rather being efficient, is something that is cherished, and difference, as much as we claim to acknowledge it and to support it, is often left in the dust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to be different is a good thing.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge, not just be different, because everybody is, whether they admit it or not. I think to nurture and to address differences as a positive aspect rather than a negative one, particularly in the high anxiety and high sensitivity,
Yep.
is very, very important to understanding it as a whole.
Yeah. And it starts with us.
Yeah.
It starts with us being able to be vulnerable, in front of the world.
Yeah, I agree.
And admit that we have a personality trait called high sensitivity, and we're totally fine with it. We love it. We love being highly sensitive, and we embrace it, and we see the beauty in it, and we love ourselves the way we are, and we don't have anything to be ashamed of. That's why we can talk about it, and we can say, yeah, I'm a highly sensitive person.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree, because I've had encounters recently with people that notice. They said, like, you don't seem to find any wrong in the word weird.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is definitely a word that's been used to describe me over the years. I definitely think, and this is something that my mom and everybody in my family has come to agree with, is being weird isn't a bad thing, nor is it something to change.
Yeah.
I like the way I am.
Yeah.
And I feel like to be sensitive, like you said, like it's just the two of us talking.
Yeah.
And showing that it isn't something to hide from. It's something to cherish.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I think if everybody acknowledges that slight bit of sensitivity, no matter how great it is, they can truly thrive as who they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right here.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. You're amazing. And at your age, I am so proud of you for agreeing to be on my show and being my guest. And it's not easy. It's not easy at your age or any age. Even at my age, people can't be vulnerable like this. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you so much. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you on my podcast today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. It's been an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. Of course. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that you have the power to create a bright and successful future for your highly sensitive child. Embrace their uniqueness, nurture their strengths, and provide them with the love and support they need. Together, we can pave a path to success that aligns with their sensitivity. Thank you for joining us today, and remember, you're not alone on this journey. We'll be here with more insights and inspiration in our next episode. Until then, keep believing in your child's potential, because they truly are extraordinary. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and stay committed to setting your child up for success in life. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com.